There are moments in MotoGP when the stopwatch becomes irrelevant, when a rider bends the laws of motion so completely that even time hesitates to record him. Marc Marquez has reached that realm. What unfolds in 2025 is not just racing. It's reincarnation through control, a rebirth sculpted from scars and seconds. His machine hums like a heartbeat wired to destiny, every vibration translated through muscle memory older than electronics. The sensors try to follow, but he rides beyond their code, predicting the future by feel alone. Each corner becomes a conversation between instinct and inertia, and he speaks a dialect that no data logger can decipher. You can see it in the way the Ducati obeys without resistance, brake pressure bleeding from 98 bar to nothing in one seamless exhale, throttle reopening in the exact thousandth before grip would fade. It isn't calculation. It's comprehension. Casey Stoner watches and recognizes something he thought the modern world had erased: the art of riding ahead of the system. He's not riding at 10/10ths, Stoner says, and that's part of the secret. The words hang heavier than any telemetry file because they name what every engineer fears and every rider dreams. That genius has evolved beyond hardware. Marquez's hands don't wait for permission from sensors. They issue commands before the bike even knows it needs them. His throttle input draws a waveform smoother than computer logic, a living algorithm built from nerve endings and trust. Where others depend on data, he depends on dialogue, the subtle feedback through frame flex, tire carcass, and the invisible physics that bind rubber to asphalt. It's old-world intuition wrapped in 21st-century discipline, a fusion that makes the extraordinary appear inevitable. And yet, behind that serenity lies the memory of pain. The man who once fought the track with reckless brilliance now measures chaos with the patience of someone who has seen his own career break beneath him. Every lap is an act of reconciliation between body and machine, between past fury and present mastery. He has turned trauma into telemetry, translating weakness into precision. At 32, he rides not to prove youth but to defy limitation, controlling the uncontrollable with a stillness that unnerves even the bravest pursuers. The numbers confirm what words can barely suggest. Corner entry speed perfectly matched to tire load distribution, energy transfer so balanced it erases fatigue from the rear shock. His style is less about attack than anticipation, less fire than gravity itself. Stoner calls him the last bridge between eras, the man who reminds the sport that feeling, when perfected, can outpace programming. Watching Marquez now is like watching light bend around a moving object, beauty and physics entangled. Every victory stretches the boundary of what human reflexes and machine intelligence can become together. In this age of data, he is the living variable no algorithm can predict. The man who once wrestled physics into submission no longer fights it. He conducts it, turning chaos into cadence, power into poetry. And somewhere inside that rhythm, in the space between throttle pulse and heart rate, the truth reveals itself. Marc Marquez no longer rides to dominate others. He rides to redefine what domination means. And as the engines fall silent beneath the roar of history, the story begins with the truth Stoner whispered first, the revelation of the calm assassin, the man who mastered chaos by learning to breathe within it. He rides as if the world has slowed to match his breathing, as if chaos itself has agreed to obey his rhythm. The Marc Marquez of 2025 is not a man chasing the edge anymore. He is the edge redrawn with the calm of someone who has burned every map and kept only the compass. He's very much relaxed. He's not riding 10/10ths, Casey Stoner observed, and in that simple sentence lies a revolution. Gone is the gladiator who once bent the laws of physics through raw defiance. What remains is a tactician who calculates victory through restraint. Each movement on the bike is deliberate, stripped of waste. His elbows no longer weapons but instruments of feel. Inside the helmet, he repeats to himself, breathe, wait, listen, like a monk translating wind into prayer. He doesn't attack corners, he invites them. Rivals speak of the eerie silence in his laps, how the engine tone seems steadier, smoother, as if he were throttling destiny rather than fuel. Telemetry confirms it. His throttle closure rate through mid-corner is 0.2 seconds slower than anyone else's, a subtle delay that gives him more traction, more life in the rear tire, more time. In the sport's brutal arithmetic, time is everything. The Ducati responds as if tamed by hypnosis, the front load perfectly balanced, the rear shock compressing in a rhythm that feels human. Every braking marker is approached not with fear but with foresight. His right hand doesn't squeeze, it persuades. The bike becomes an extension of intention, an idea rendered in carbon and muscle. "I'll learn that chaos can be useful if you keep it on a leash," he he once told a friend, and that sentence hangs over every lap like prophecy. His rivals sweat under the same sun, but their desperation burns rubber faster than fuel. His precision cools everything around him. It is as though he has discovered a hidden layer in reality where movement costs nothing. Engineers call it harmonic load management, a delicate dance between torque and traction that allows him to flow without resistance. Watching him is like watching ink spread across paper, inevitable, fluid, final. In his mind, there is no noise, only the whisper of the front tire translating grip into trust. Each lap is a conversation, not a conquest. The man who once broke bones now breaks patterns, replacing instinct with architecture. Stoner calls it controlled serenity, but it feels like something deeper, almost metaphysical, a communion between man and mechanism. He wins not by speed but by subtraction, each risk removed, each unnecessary motion erased until only essence remains. The crowd cheers for dominance, yet what they witness is discipline disguised as art. He could go faster, yes, but he no longer needs to. The others chase limits, he expands them. His telemetry traces the shape of intelligence itself, lines of logic drawn at 300 kilometers per hour. The throttle pulses like a heartbeat, his breathing synchronized to gear changes, a symphony of precision. In that balance, there is beauty, but also fear, the fear of what happens when perfection becomes routine. The old Marquez raced with violence. The new one races with silence, and silence is harder to fight. Marquez doesn't attack the race. He lets the race destroy itself around him. The metaphor is exact. He is a still point in a storm, a mirror in motion reflecting everyone else's mistakes. Each checkered flag feels less like triumph and more like confirmation that control, not courage, is the final evolution of speed. And when he removes the helmet, the eyes that once burned now measure, the smile that once roared now questions. For in the calm he has created, he knows the truth that terrifies every rider. Chaos was never the enemy. It was the teacher, and he, the perfect student who learned to ride its silence to victory. There was a time when racing was an act of faith, when riders listened to the hum of the tires and the vibration through the pegs to know if the bike still loved them. That world has almost vanished beneath layers of sensors, algorithms, and predictive software, yet Marc Marquez carries its ghost inside his fingertips. Riders like Marc and Danny Pedrosa learned to ride ahead of the systems, Casey Stoner said, as if naming an endangered language. In an age where traction control predicts, anti-wheelie compensates, and engineers sculpt every line of telemetry, Marquez still closes his eyes before each run and imagines the circuit by feel, not by data. Find the edge, don't let it find you, he tells himself before engaging first gear, a mantra carved from years when instinct mattered more than software. The secret lies in microfeedback. The front tires send a frequency through the carbon steering stem at around 80 Hz, a pulse he has learned to translate into grip. It's like reading Braille at 300 kilometers per hour. Others see numbers. He feels textures. Each corner becomes a conversation in an extinct dialect. The rubbers whisper against asphalt. The front breaks breath before lockup. Modern riders interpret through dashboards. He interprets through nerve endings. His Ducati obeys not because of electronics, but because his body has become its analog sensor. There's poetry in that, but also defiance. Engineers murmur about him, confusing the algorithms, his fluid throttle inputs refusing to match expected models, like jazz disrupting a metronome. He doesn't ride by reaction. One technician admits he rides by prediction. It is a forgotten art, seeing the slide before it begins, catching the front through trust rather than code. Stoner watches from pit wall, half nostalgic, half envious, knowing that feel cannot be engineered back once lost. The spectacle is quieter now. No smoke, no theatrics, only precision disguised as instinct. He bends the bike into corners not by command but persuasion, a sculptor guiding marble rather than chiseling it. The metaphor is alive. Marquez doesn't fight resistance, he coaxes it to cooperate, shaping momentum like clay under pressure. When he exits a turn with millimetric perfection, the telemetry engineers can only nod, their graphs incapable of translating intuition. Inside the helmet, he smiles at their screens, thinking, you can't program this. Every lap is proof that soul still has a place among the sensors. He rides before the systems, and that is why he remains untouchable. The climax arrives in silence. No slide, no save, just a perfect line too smooth to analyze. While others trust the machines, Marquez trusts his own feel for the limit, and that is the art no computer will ever reclaim. There is a moment barely measurable between grip and slide, a place where physics trembles and data hesitates. Marc Marquez lives there. His perception runs faster than the algorithms written to protect him, faster even than the sensors pulsing thousands of times per second beneath the carbon shell. Mark still has an idea of where the grip level should be. He's riding in front of that, Casey Stoner revealed, sounding more like a scientist than a rival. What Stoner meant is that Marquez has become the sport's first human algorithm, a living processor who reads the tire's mood before electronics can translate it. The IMU, the inertial measurement unit that defines modern MotoGP, responds in 0.004 seconds. Marquez responds in 0.003 less, guided not by calculation but premonition. Trust the slide before it starts, he murmurs in the helmet, feeling traction as vibration through the seat of the bike. It's not mysticism. It's muscle memory shaped by a decade of pain, crashes, and recovery. He doesn't fight technology. He absorbs it, turning sensors into allies instead of supervisors. His throttle traces are smoother than computer models predict, confusing engineers who cannot explain the absence of spikes. He's not riding at 10/10 anymore, and that's part of the secret, Stoner said, understanding that the new dominance isn't about excess but timing. Electronics intervene after a mistake. Marquez prevents it. His movements precede correction, as if he knows the equations before they're solved. Ducati technicians describe his data as asynchronous elegance, a pattern where man and machine overlap without conflict. When others break, he breathes. When others twitch, he settles. The balance is so precise it feels biological, like a predator adjusting to invisible tremors in the air. Watching him, you sense he's not reacting to the track but rewriting it beneath him. His brain doesn't calculate, it anticipates, mapping grip as light rather than friction. The rear tire spins, then redrips in a motion too clean to record, a phenomenon closer to instinct than engineering. In those moments, he is neither man nor machine, but the syntax that connects them, the living code of velocity. Even Stoner, the purist, admits the paradox. Marquez's old-school feel wrapped in digital armor. The hybrid, the prototype of a future rider who doesn't fear systems because he understands their language. I am the algorithm now, he thinks, cornering with the certainty of someone who has already seen the outcome. The climax comes in silence. No slides, no saves, just the perfection of anticipation. While others follow their data, Marquez leads his destiny. In the paddock hum of laptops and telemetry screens, you can hear the difference between eras, the metallic rhythm of keys replacing the whisper of intuition. The now generation only knows to let the engineers set it up, Casey Stoner said, his tone balanced between frustration and mourning. He sees in today's riders a dependence that borders on obedience, young talents waiting for code to tell them what their senses should already know. Marquez, meanwhile, walks into the garage carrying a notebook marked with scribbles of brake pressure, tire carcass flex, and wind temperature variations, fragments of an intelligence that lives outside the algorithm. He doesn't need a screen to know how the bike will behave. He senses it through posture, the same way a pianist feels harmony through fingertips. Don't ask for balance, create it, he mutters before first practice, more teacher than competitor. PCO Bagnaia spends each Friday chasing a neutral front, his crew resetting suspension values in search of stability that seems to evaporate with every degree of asphalt heat. Marquez arrives with a clear trajectory, 3 laps to measure grip, 2 to simulate degradation, then a rhythm run to calculate race pace by feel. His engineers adjust around him, not the other way around. The gap between them is philosophical, reaction versus prediction, trust in numbers versus trust in nerve endings. He treats the Ducati not as a project but as a partner, tuning its heartbeat by instinct rather than code. Stoner calls him a rider-engineer hybrid, a man who interprets telemetry through sensation, not submission. Others wait for data to confirm what Marquez already knows. In the era of dependency, he is independence personified. The front end, that fickle ghost haunting so many riders, speaks clearly to him because he listens in real time, not through post-session graphs. There's a tiny but telling detail. His first lap out of the pits is always without radio updates. He wants to read the bike raw. It's an act of rebellion disguised as routine. He's not faster because of setup. One mechanic whispers he's faster because he feels setup. The metaphor becomes obvious. Others ride by prescription. He rides by instinct, like a jazz musician improvising over the rhythm of combustion. And while the new generation scrolls through data traces, Marquez closes his eyes and memorizes the sound of traction. The contrast is brutal. One seeks correction, the other seeks connection. The sport has moved towards simulation. He has remained human. The climax comes not with a record lap, but with a quiet truth echoing through the pit wall. The new breed rides with computers. Marquez rides with his soul. He rides now as if each lap were a problem of logic, each curve a question asked in a language only he remembers. The essence of Marc Marquez's new racecraft isn't aggression, it's architecture. Stoner calls it the mind of a chess player trapped in the body of a gladiator, and he means it literally. Marquez measures chaos the way others measure speed, mapping risk as geometry. He no longer dives for gaps, he builds them. Wait, breathe, let them come to you, he whispers into the visor, the sentence more strategy than comfort. The first phase of every race is reconnaissance. He studies rivals' lines, notes throttle hesitations, the minute drifts that betray tire choice. When the others attack early, he lets them, watching heat bloom on their rear rubber until physics begins to punish their confidence. His telemetry traces a perfect rhythm, brake pressure rising smoothly to 98 bar, release time with the heartbeat of the front tire. Then comes the strike. No drama, no wasted motion, just a clean insertion of pace where fatigue leaves a void. Engineers describe his data as surgical symmetry, the temperature across both tires differing by less than 1 degree at race end. That is control, not coincidence. His Ducati responds to his inputs like a pulse to a thought, traction electronics harmonized with throttle movement, so subtle it escapes the sensor's resolution. Stoner once said, he rides the moment before the moment happens, and watching him, you believe it. Each corner is a note and a score only he can hear. The crowd sees a pass, the data reveals a plan executed 10 laps in the making. This is what Stoner calls evolved intelligence, a kind of predictive calm that weaponizes patience. Rivals still chase adrenaline. He chases probability. His pit wall trusts him blindly, the race engineer barely speaking during the final laps because interference would only disrupt the music. The metaphor becomes inevitable. The grid is his chessboard, tires his pawns, and victory the quiet checkmate announced not with roar but stillness. Marquez wins not by overpowering but by outthinking, using chaos as material rather than menace. When he crosses the line, telemetry and emotion converge in one undeniable truth. His racecraft is no longer about aggression, it's orchestration. Pain rewrites the anatomy of greatness. When Marc Marquez shattered his arm in 2020, doctors warned that full strength might never return, but what he rebuilt instead was something rarer, clarity. The old Marquez fought gravity, the new one negotiates with it, transforming brutality into geometry. Everybody said he'd be good, but this good? No one foresaw it, Casey Stoner admitted, astonished by the precision born from limitation. Years of surgery and silence forged a rider who studies pain as data, turning every scar into a line of code. Don't fight the fall. Learn its language, he told himself while rehab machines hummed through sleepless nights. Weakness became an instrument, patience the new throttle. Every lap now is an equation of endurance, throttle softened by a single %, braking load balance to spare the arm, heart rate steadied under 160 BPM. Yet none of it feels mechanical. It feels enlightened. He's on another level now, said Alex Marquez, all laced with surrender. Each Sunday his eyes hold no rage, only intent, the calm of a man who knows restraint can wound harder than speed. Off track, he mentors David Alonso and Maxim Quilles, teaching rhythm before risk, shaping riders who learn to listen before they lean. Even Stoner concedes that mastery has found new form, balance over aggression, precision over impulse. The pain didn't end him, it redefined him. Now 2025 moves like prophecy. 10 consecutive wins shimmer on the horizon, the echo of 2014 reimagined through age and composure. At 32, he stands on the verge of becoming the oldest Premier Class champion, his scars signatures of time's surrender. He's rewriting what it means to peak, said one commentator, watching him glide with the serenity of inevitability. The Ducati's sensors hum beneath him, measuring brilliance in kilobytes yet missing the one metric that matters, the hunger to transcend. Each checker flag feels less like conclusion, more like punctuation in an autobiography written in lean angles. Misano awaits, Rossi's home, the theater where legacy and symmetry may finally align. Should he equal 9 titles there, the moment will vibrate beyond rivalry. It will complete the circle. Stoner calls it poetic justice, but the truth is gentler. The man who once fought physics now defies time. From pit wall, Stoner watches the red blur carve impossible arcs and whispers. While everyone else leans on electronics, Marquez still rides ahead of them. He is the last of the old guard, bridging instinct and algorithm, flesh and firmware. His telemetry reads like meditation, smooth, anticipatory, inexplicable. Rivals drown in data. He sketches victory in silence. Ducati's best operate inside. Systems he rewrites mid-race. He's the bridge between eras, Stoner says, pride and disbelief intertwined. Marquez rides with the wisdom of those who once felt grip through prayer and the discipline of those who now measure it in code. His rhythm is slower, deadlier, every line a whisper of inevitability. The sport feels smaller around him, as if MotoGP itself were an instrument being played by its own composer. Analysts speak of reflexes, but what they miss is philosophy. Marquez isn't reacting to MotoGP. MotoGP is reacting to him. The climax arrives not in speed, but in understanding. We are witnessing the end of one kind of racing and the birth of another, embodied in one rider. Even silence, Stoner's most honest language, concedes the truth. Marquez isn't just winning races, he's redefining where rider is in the age of data, a champion from another time, rewriting history in the age of precision.